Picture Tokyo in the 1980s. The city was a buzzing hive of activity, with the economy booming like never before. Skyscrapers were rising, and the real estate market was on fire. You could feel the sense of endless possibility in the air. Imagine a small boy walking through the streets, witnessing the height of a country's prosperity, where everything seemed possible.
Fast forward to today, and the picture isn't nearly as bright. Japan is facing an economic decline that some have called its Mount Fuji of debt. The country's debt to GDP ratio is higher than almost any other major economy. It's a fascinating link between the past prosperity that boy once saw and the major challenges facing Japan now. How did Japan, once invincible, find itself struggling with such mammoth financial issues?
So, isn't it amazing how Japan played such a crucial role in the global economy for so many years? It was almost like the world's piggy bank, right? Japan pumped trillions into global markets, funding so many important projects like US Treasury bills and even metro lines in Australia. It's quite significant how a single country's economy could reach such far corners of the world, funding and owning assets. This trust and investment shaped global growth for decades.
Exactly. Japan's investments were not just about owning foreign assets. They provided essential liquidity during economic downturns, especially for places like Wall Street. Whenever there was a financial need, Tokyo was ready to supply the cash. It's quite striking when you think about it. But today, with growing economic instability in Japan, these contributions are at risk. The once reliable piggy bank is facing challenges, which affects not just Japan, but the global economy as well. This shift is really worth understanding.
This economic role was rooted deeply in Japan's foreign investment strategy. At one point, Japan's net foreign assets were more than any other nation's, peaking at about $3 trillion. This was no small feat. They were single-handedly the biggest foreign investors in many markets, holding European bonds and Silicon Valley tech stocks. Surely, Japan's huge investment activities and influence on the global stage were instrumental in maintaining financial flows during tougher times in many economies.
That's correct. But we must remember that the tide has turned now. As Japan deals with its internal financial struggles, its ability to stabilize global markets is diminishing. This shift poses a challenge not only for Japan but also for international economies that relied on its investment for liquidity. With Japan's debt rising and its investment capability dropping, it creates ripples far beyond its borders. We can only hope that the world finds new ways to fill this gap left by Japan.
You know, Japan is facing quite a unique situation with its declining birth rates. For many years now, the country has been experiencing more deaths than births. In 2024, there were only about 720,988 babies born, while over 1,620,000 people passed away. This is a staggering difference. It really paints a picture of how the population is aging and shrinking. This lack of young people poses a real challenge to Japan's workforce and domestic demand.
That's right. The Japanese government has attempted several strategies to tackle this demographic issue. They've offered financial incentives to families to encourage having more children and improved childcare support. Additionally, Japan has relaxed its typically strict immigration policies a bit to bring in foreign workers. Yet these measures can only do so much due to cultural factors. High living costs, small housing, later marriages, and more women focusing on careers continue to keep birth rates at about 1.2 children per woman.
Exactly. And if you look at long-term projections, Japan's population is expected to fall below 105 million by 2050 and could even drop to 87 million by 2060. Such a decline doesn't just mean fewer people, but also affects the economy. Fewer young workers translate to a smaller tax base and reduced consumer demand. Meanwhile, healthcare and pension costs for the aging population are skyrocketing. That imbalance places a heavy burden on the remaining workforce, making it hard to sustain economic growth.
Indeed, these demographic challenges are profound. With a current worker-to-retiree ratio of 1.8 compared to 5.1 back in the 1990s, the pressure on the workforce is immense. More of their income goes to taxes and supporting healthcare for the elderly, leaving less for personal savings or investments. This risks a slowdown in economic activity, creating a cycle that's hard to break. Without significant changes, Japan may struggle to maintain its economic stability while facing the dual pressures of a declining population and rising costs.
When we take a good look at Japan's debt to GDP ratio, the numbers are staggering. We're talking about a figure that sits at about 260%, which is much higher than any other major economy you can think of. For a bit of perspective, even Greece didn't reach such heights, and it faced serious financial trouble, nearly causing Europe's economy to falter. It's striking to consider how Japan, once solid and reliable, found itself where it is today, with such a mountain of debt.
Indeed, the weight of this debt has historical roots. Over the decades, Japan's debt kept growing, partly thanks to government spending intended to stimulate the economy. Whenever Japan faced economic slowdowns, the go-to response was to pump money into infrastructure and public projects, hoping these actions would keep the economy alive. Yet whether these constant borrowing decisions were the best route is a big question, especially as Japan struggles with servicing its own debt now. The challenge of paying off this debt seems ever more daunting.
Despite the noble intent behind the borrowing, Japan's vast debt brings hefty challenges, specifically with debt servicing. One big worry is the risk of rising interest rates. Right now, interest rates have been kept low, which makes managing the debt somewhat easier. But even a small rise in interest rates could quickly change everything. Suddenly, Japan would find the cost of its debt much higher, increasing financial strain. The fear here is a debt spiral, where these rising costs push Japan to borrow even more just to keep up with interest payments, which could destabilize the financial system.
Yes, and it's crucial to consider how fragile this balance is. Japan's reliance on borrowing as a mainstay to support its economy means it walks a fine line. If any part of this balance shifts, such as a change in global interest rates or trust in government bonds diminishing, it could spiral into a much more precarious financial situation. The government has to tread carefully with these financial policies. A small misstep could have ramifications not just for Japan itself, but conceivably for global markets relying on this once steady economic giant.
Let's dive into the early 1990s, a time when Japan faced a major turning point. The economic bubble burst, and it was a rough period for the country. Before this burst, the Japanese economy was booming, with skyrocketing real estate prices and stock markets hitting record highs. But then everything crumbled overnight, leading to long-term stagnation and deflation. It was a shocking change, and the Japanese government needed to learn from it and adapt wisely.
Absolutely. The burst of the bubble taught the government significant lessons. The rapid growth and subsequent crash showed that unchecked economic expansion had its consequences. In response, they adopted various spending strategies during crises, hoping to stabilize the economy. They launched numerous make-work projects, built highways and bridges, and provided subsidies. These efforts were not just immediate reactions, but key steps in adjusting the economy in the years that followed the bubble's burst.
Through these economic adjustments, Japan transitioned from a boom phase to one marked by stagnation. The once thriving economy had to deal with a much slower pace. However, the transition wasn't smooth. The government faced challenges in dealing with deflation and finding ways to maintain balance without relying excessively on borrowing. This need for strategic adjustments emphasized the importance of learning from past mistakes to avoid repeating them in the future.
Indeed, the Japanese experience from this period highlights valuable lessons on managing economic cycles. It's about the need to effectively balance growth and caution. Even as the country sought to navigate its difficulties, its journey offered critical insights for other nations facing similar economic downturns. The shift from a period of economic prosperity to one of stagnation was a learning process that influenced Japan's economic policies moving forward. These lessons may serve other countries well in steering clear of similar pitfalls.
We've touched on Japan's past and its economic struggles, but the Bank of Japan plays a crucial part in today's scene through the use of quantitative easing, or QE. This approach involves the central bank creating new money to buy government bonds, effectively changing the economic landscape. The aim is to keep interest rates low, making it cheaper for the government to borrow, even amidst rising debt.
Indeed, the practice of quantitative easing has kept Japan afloat by lowering interest rates and ensuring the government can still borrow smoothly. By buying a large portion of government bonds, the Bank of Japan has managed to support the economy heavily since other buyers would demand higher returns. This approach isn't unique to Japan, though. The U.S. Federal Reserve, for instance, has also dabbled in QE. But Japan's approach is much more extensive and persistent.
The scale at which the Bank of Japan conducts QE is remarkable. At one point, the bank held government bonds worth over 130% of Japan's GDP. This made Japan's QE efforts stand out on the global stage. Unlike what we've seen in the US, this bold move by Japan has kept borrowing costs low and helped stabilize government finances, despite enormous debt. It's a strategy that's kept the lights on so far.
While QE has had its benefits, it's not without risks. Keeping interest rates extremely low for too long can discourage normal financial activities in the market. Moreover, reliance on QE puts a question mark over what happens when the Bank of Japan decides to adjust its policy or if global rates rise. Maintaining economic stability is crucial, or Japan may face financial challenges more severe than those it currently faces.
Today, as we dive deeper, let's explore how Japan manages its debt, which is quite unique compared to other countries. You see, a large part of Japan's debt is held internally. This means that rather than relying on foreign investors, they depend on domestic ones. So, when Japan issues bonds, a good portion is bought by its own people through various systems, like postal savings. This setup has been key in avoiding some of the risks faced by other countries with high levels of foreign debt.
While this internal handling of debt offers some cushioning against global market fluctuations, the risk of a debt spiral remains a concern. Now, what exactly is a debt spiral? It's when rising interest rates inflate debt repayment costs, forcing further borrowing. If Japan's interest rates increase, it could significantly affect their debt payments, creating a difficult cycle that can destabilize the economy. Maintaining low rates is crucial, as it helps prevent this vicious cycle from happening.
You've hit the nail on the head about this delicate act. Japan's strategy has been to keep interest rates low and ensure that their economy doesn't spiral into uncontrollable debt due to rising costs. This is where the Bank of Japan's monetary policies come into play. They have been quite aggressive in sustaining low interest rates, which has so far helped manage the colossal debt Japan faces. This delicate balance might seem intricate, but it is necessary for Japan's economic health.
Indeed, and Japan strives to maintain economic stability despite the looming shadows of debt. By continuing to encourage internal investments and keeping interest rates in check, they manage to prevent immediate financial crises. However, it's a cautious path. There's always the possibility of global influences altering this balance. Any significant change in global economic trends or shifts in investor confidence could unsettle this finely tuned system. It's crucial that Japan remains vigilant to sustain this stability over time.
As we conclude today's episode, let's take a moment to think about Japan's economic journey. From a booming period of prosperity in the 1980s to significant challenges today, Japan's story is full of lessons. We have touched on its demographic difficulties, the heavy debt load, and the crucial role played by the Bank of Japan. These are issues that require attention and smart solutions, not just for Japan, but for the global economy.
Indeed, while the challenges are serious, there is hope. Japan has the ability to find solutions with innovation and help from its active community. We can all learn from Japan's story. We would love to hear what you think about the future of Japan and its economy. Please share your thoughts, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights on global economies. Your engagement is important to us.